Ethan Cole used to believe in control. Every moment of his life was planned, methodical, quiet, intentional. The way he stirred his coffee, the way he folded his shirts, even the way he said, "I love you," before leaving for work, like clockwork, at 7:12 a.m. sharp. He was the kind of man you'd never notice in a crowd. Crisp, polite, always fading into the background. But beneath that calm, predictable surface, he held a mind sharper than any scalpel. A toxicologist for one of the nation's top research hospitals, Ethan spent his days identifying poisons, tracing invisible killers, and saving lives. Irony had a sense of humor, because while he was curing others, someone was slowly killing him. It started subtle. Fatigue, a fog he couldn't shake, a strange metallic taste in his mouth after his morning tea. Then came the dizzy spells, numb fingertips, chest pressure, and that one morning, he passed out cold, hitting the kitchen floor like dead weight. Amelia was there, of course, always with the perfect reaction, the soft gasp, the worried eyes, the performance. "Maybe it's stress," she whispered, placing a cup in his hand like she always did. Same delicate china, same honey-lemon blend, same poison. He didn't see it then, not fully, not clearly, but something inside him, some buried instinct, woke up that day on the cold tile floor. And from that moment on, Ethan Cole stopped being the man who trusted too easily. He started watching, listening, remembering. This wasn't just his life anymore. This was his war. Hey, if you're still watching, that means you're enjoying the story. I have one small request. I'm trying to reach my first 1,000 subscribers. If you like stories like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to join the journey. It means a lot to me. And trust me, even better stories are coming. Amelia Cole was perfection in heels. She wasn't just beautiful. She knew she was beautiful. Her smile was designed, polished like her social media feed. Every photo, every laugh, every public gesture with Ethan, hand on his shoulder, lips near his ear, calculated to present the perfect wife. To the world, she was supportive, soft-spoken, a woman who stood beside her genius husband and made his silence look mysterious instead of lonely. But Ethan saw things the cameras never caught. How her smile vanished the moment the front door closed. How she corrected him when guests weren't around. How her eyes glazed over whenever he spoke about his work, as if she were trapped in a life she didn't choose. The truth was, Amelia never wanted a quiet man. She wanted a man the world worshipped, one who'd elevate her. And when Ethan's refusal to chase fame got in the way of her rising brand, she didn't argue. She poisoned, quietly, casually, with the same grace she used to greet her followers on Instagram. The first time Ethan noticed the strange powder in the trash, he didn't say anything. He just watched her more closely. Her hands, her timing, how she always made the tea herself, how she poured his cup first. She smiled as she served it, like a wife in a commercial. But Ethan stopped drinking it that week. And every day after, he faked the sip. She didn't notice. She never paid enough attention to the man who actually noticed everything. While she played the role, he studied the game. And she had no idea. She was teaching him how to destroy her. The human body speaks before it screams. Ethan had spent his life studying subtle signs, slowed heart rates, organ shifts, discoloration. It was all there in the science. But when it happened to him, it hit different. It felt personal. In his lab, surrounded by microscopes and machines, he ran his own blood again and again. He didn't tell his staff, didn't alert the hospital. He used backdoor access, early mornings, late nights. Silent entries. No fingerprints. The results came back with a name that made his pulse stop. Thallium. A heavy metal. Tasteless. Odorless. Lethal in high doses, devastating in slow ones. Illegal in household products. Almost impossible to trace without the right knowledge. She was clever. He was smarter. He tracked every dose by the hour. Calculated how much she'd given him. Estimated how close he'd come to the edge. And then he stopped everything. No more tea. No more symptoms. He replaced the cups when she wasn't looking, stored the tea she made in a secure vial in the back of their wine cooler, each one labeled, each one waiting for the day she'd face the truth. She thought he was getting weaker. He was just getting ready. That month, she invited a local news team to film a segment on power couples in medicine, a profile on their beautiful marriage. She did all the talking. He just smiled, nodded, and quietly gave the reporter one of the tainted vials labeled Sample A. He told her it was a vitamin supplement. He lied. He was done surviving in silence. The clock was ticking, and the world was about to watch what happens when a poisoner drinks her own recipe. And not just anywhere. Live. Everything Ethan owned fit into 3 categories: tools, records, or silence. He didn't live loudly. He never craved attention. His home was clean, minimalist. White walls, dark wood floors, no clutter. Even the photos were carefully placed. But now, when he looked at that smiling wedding picture on the mantel, Amelia's hand resting delicately on his chest, it felt like mockery. She had poisoned more than just his body. She poisoned the memory of his life. The things he once cherished, his morning routine, his quiet reading time, the tea he drank while watching the fog roll off the lake, were all contaminated now. Tainted. She'd taken those sacred, personal things and turned them into weapons. But Ethan didn't rage. He collected photos of the tea, vials labeled with dates, surveillance footage from a hidden camera he installed behind the spice cabinet, audio recordings where timing gave her away, and something else, something no one else knew he had, a live blood breakdown, showing each spike in toxicity over time. The evidence wasn't just overwhelming. It was undeniable, but he wasn't ready to release it. Not yet, because this wasn't about proving she tried to kill him. This was about making sure the world saw who she truly was. Not in a courtroom, not in a police station, in the place she loved most, under the lights, in front of the cameras. That's when it would matter. That's when it would hurt. The irony didn't escape him. The one thing she used to poison him would soon become her sentence. Ethan stared at the tea cabinet like it was a graveyard. Rows of innocent boxes lined up in neat order, green, herbal detox blends. But he knew which one she favored. The honey lemon ginger mix she always insisted on. The one she said calms your stomach after a long shift. He'd kept every batch she ever touched. Now, he was mixing one of his own. In his lab, he prepared a single packet. Same flavor, same scent, but laced with a custom compound. Not lethal. Nocin permanent. Just enough to simulate his original symptoms: dizziness, nausea, blinding headaches. It wouldn't kill her. It would expose her. He tested the formula 3 times, made sure the taste was identical, even brewed it in the exact cup she used for him. He wasn't interested in theatrics. He wanted precision. This wasn't vengeance. It was surgical justice. He planned it for the morning of the TV appearance, the segment Amelia had so proudly arranged. A national spotlight, a live-streamed love and science profile with the top-rated show in the country. She thought it would boost her brand. It would end it. That morning, as she touched up her makeup and practiced her lines in the mirror, Ethan brewed 2 identical cups of tea. He added a cinnamon stick to both to mask any trace. A mirror image of what she used to do. She took her cup without hesitation, smiled, sipped, and fate took its first turn. For months, she poisoned him. For status, for image, for whatever secret reason she still hadn't said. But Ethan didn't want her confession. He wanted her exposed. The cameras rolled at 10:02 a.m. 2 anchors, 3 studio lights, 1 perfect backdrop of their lovely home. Amelia wore white, her favorite color for interviews. Innocent, approachable. Ethan wore navy. Clean, calm, the ghost of a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. He knew exactly what was coming. They started with the basics, how they met, what it was like being married in the medical field. Amelia took the lead, always guiding the narrative like she'd rehearsed every line. "He's the genius," she said with a laugh. "I'm just the tea fetcher." The anchors chuckled. Ethan didn't. She makes the tea every morning, he said, voice quiet but steady. She's very precise. The anchor raised an eyebrow, sensing something unscripted. And do you drink it too, Amelia? The other asked casually. Amelia smiled. Of course. I'd never serve him anything I wouldn't drink myself. Ethan glanced sideways. Watch her lift the cup again. Her second sip. He saw it. The faint twitch in her left eye. The way her throat tightened. She blinked too fast, her hand lowering just a little too quickly. The symptoms would take 12 minutes to set in. Exactly. Just in time for the final thoughts segment. He waited. Watched. This wasn't just revenge. This was balance. Everything she did to him, he was returning sip for sip. And she still didn't realize she was on the clock. 12 minutes. That's how long Ethan calculated the onset would take. Not a second more. Not a second less. He'd tested the compound on himself first, at 1/3 the dose. Just enough to understand it. To control it. To own it. Now it was hers. As the interview continued, Amelia's confident glow began to flicker. Not enough for the anchors to notice. But Ethan saw it instantly. A bead of sweat under her left temple. A tremble in her fingers as she adjusted her mic. She kept smiling, but her eyes were shifting. Too fast. Searching. She was trying to ground herself. Something wasn't right. She knew it in her gut. But not enough to stop the show. The host asked Ethan a simple question. How do you stay calm, even under pressure? Ethan looked straight into the camera. My wife taught me, he said. The room chuckled. She didn't. He heard her breathing change. Shallow. Quick. By minute 11, her voice cracked on a sentence. She reached for her cup again, out of habit, not thought. Sip number 3. He almost pitted her. Almost. They wrapped the interview with a soft laugh and a gentle round of applause. A segment producer gestured for the live crew to cut back to the studio. But Amelia didn't rise. She blinked hard. Swallowed. Can we take a break for a moment? She said, voice barely holding. Her body leaned forward slightly, hands clutching the table. Ethan stayed still. Calm. Perfect. The lead anchor's face shifted from polite host to concerned friend. Are you all right? I just need water, she whispered. Ethan finally moved, pushed a glass toward her. She didn't touch it. Her gaze locked on him, wide-eyed, uncertain, almost pleading. And that's when he leaned in. Low. Controlled. Don't worry, he whispered. It's not fatal. You'll feel everything I felt. Just faster. Her pupils widened. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and smiled for the next camera angle. Because this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about identity. She stripped him of control. Now he was reclaiming it, publicly. She used his love to serve him poison. He used her ego to serve her truth. The producer whispered urgently into her headset, signaling that something was wrong. Medical staff hovered off camera. But Amelia shook her head, trying to push through the nausea. She didn't want to break character. Not on live national television. But it was too late. Her skin had gone pale. Her lips dry. She blinked, shook her head, then tried to stand. Her knees buckled. Ethan caught her, not to help, but to keep the illusion going. The anchors looked stunned. And the broadcast? Still running. Live. Across homes, cafes, phones, tablets. And if you're watching this right now, wherever you are, tell me something. What city are you watching from? Drop in the comments. I'm serious. Because the truth you're seeing, it's real. This isn't a drama. This isn't a movie. It's a man finally standing up after being poisoned in silence for months. So whether you're in Atlanta, Chicago, Karachi, Nairobi, or some quiet corner of Des Moines, I want to know who saw it happen. Who saw the moment justice brewed and bit back. Because this cup, this wasn't just tea. It was evidence. And the final ingredient was being witnessed by you. For years, Ethan gave her everything. His loyalty, his silence, his name. He stood behind Amelia at every gala, every launch event, every red carpet charity she orchestrated to boost her brand. She used his title, Dr. Ethan Cole, to gain influence, to draw sponsors, to sell the lie of their perfect marriage. And he let her, because he thought love meant sacrifice. But this wasn't love. It was warfare in disguise. And now, as Amelia sat slumped on the studio couch, shaking, struggling to speak, he knew the world had just seen her mask fall. And for once, he didn't rush to fix it. Medical staff approached. Amelia waved them off, still trying to maintain control. Her lips curled into a faint, cracked smile as she whispered, "Just low blood sugar. Lies. Still lying." The anchor offered to cut the segment. Ethan spoke first. "No need. She just needs a few minutes. You know how intense live broadcasts can be." He stared straight into the lens. "She's stronger than she looks." Inside, he burned, because for all the lies she fed him, he would feed her one undeniable truth. You don't get to rewrite history. Not this time. Not when he was the one writing the final chapter. It wasn't just the poisoning. It was what she did during those months that poisoned everything else. Ethan had traced it all. While he grew weaker, Amelia grew bolder. She began moving money between accounts, changing passwords, shifting assets into her name, quietly separating herself from the man she was slowly destroying. There were nights she came home late, her perfume unfamiliar. Days she lied about photo shoots that didn't exist. And that one weekend she went to a spa retreat, but the security cameras at their lake house told a different story. She wasn't just trying to kill him. She was preparing a world where he no longer existed. But what she didn't know was that he never stopped watching. He had access to every financial move, every call log, every camera angle. He planted software she never suspected, monitored her late-night emails, even traced her fake identity used to purchase the thallium compound. She had turned their marriage into a chessboard. She played like he was sleeping. But Ethan, he was just waiting for checkmate. The show finally ended. The screen faded to black. Producers moved fast. The camera crew cleared out. Security closed the doors. But in the center of the studio, Amelia sat frozen. Her breathing shallow, her hands twitching. The symptoms were temporary. A carefully engineered echo of what she'd done to him. But the panic in her eyes? That was real. Ethan crouched beside her, no longer acting, just watching. "How long have you known?" she whispered, barely able to speak. He didn't answer. She looked at him like a stranger, like she'd never seen him before, because the man she thought she was slowly erasing was never weak. He stood up, adjusting his jacket. "You'll be fine in an hour," he said calmly. "But the world won't forget what they just saw." She stared at him, trembling. And that's when he walked out, past the crew, past the producers, past the anchors still whispering behind the scenes. He didn't say another word, because silence was the same thing she once used to trap him. Now, it was the sound of her world collapsing. For the first time in months, Ethan could breathe without effort. The toxic fog that had once clouded his mind was gone. But something heavier remained in his chest. Clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after surviving a quiet where no one knew he was fighting. He didn't feel victorious. He felt awake. He sat in his car outside the studio for 10 minutes after the broadcast, watching the door, watching the people rush around. No one stopped him. No one questioned why the interview ended so strangely. It was too soon, too raw. Everyone was still spinning. But he knew Amelia. She'd recover. She'd regroup. She'd try to twist it. She might even cry on social media later, claiming she'd been ill, that the pressure had gotten to her, that something went wrong with him. And that's why Ethan wasn't done. Because the sip wasn't the end. It was just the signal. He picked up his phone, opened a secured folder, and hit upload. Video footage, audio clips, blood test logs, purchase records, all carefully time-stamped, all irrefutable. A private drive linked only to one destination. Every journalist who'd ever written about the power couple. The truth wasn't just going to be seen. It was going to be broadcast again and again until the world connected the dots. Because for everything she tried to take from him, he was taking back his name. Ethan had always been quiet in the background, Amelia liked it that way. She liked being the one who spoke for them both, who got the attention, who walked in first. And he let her have it. But while she performed, he prepared. He knew something was wrong by the third month of symptoms. By the fourth, he'd run his own blood panels. By the fifth, he'd stopped drinking her tea and began collecting it. By the sixth, he'd set up a private testing protocol, storing physical evidence and tracking Amelia's behavior. He didn't confront her, didn't accuse. That would have made her careful. Instead, he gave her space. He gave her trust. He gave her just enough rope. And she hung herself with it. It wasn't just about survival. It became strategy. He ordered the same poison she used, but through a shell lab with a fake identity, just to learn how she got it. He sent false texts from a burner phone, pretending to be a client offering her influencer deals just to see what she'd do. She took the bait every time. She was reckless in her greed, arrogant in her cruelty. But most of all, she underestimated him. And now that the cameras had rolled and the real story had begun to leak, the only thing left to do was finish what he started. The next day, the internet erupted. Clips from the broadcast spread like wildfire. Viewers zooming in on Amelia's shaking hands, her strange reaction, the final stare between husband and wife. Everyone sensed something had gone horribly wrong. But then came the leak. News outlets received a digital file titled, "Months of Murder, the True Story Behind the Broadcast." Within hours, headlines exploded. Doctor reveals wife's attempted poisoning on live TV. America's power couple, a lie built on toxic tea. Footage, evidence, and silence. How Dr. Ethan Cole outsmarted death. Ethan stayed quiet. No statements. No interviews. He let the world do the talking now. His phone rang. Non-stop. Media, lawyers, friends, even family he hadn't spoken to in years. But all he could think about was the test. He had endured it. He had survived her poisoning, her manipulation, her betrayal. And now, she was being tested by the truth, by the public, by the consequences of her own hand. And there was no formula in the world to reverse that. So this is what it felt like to flip the mirror, to let her see what it's like to be doubted, watched, exposed. For months, Ethan had gone to bed wondering if he'd wake up. Now, she lay sleepless, eyes wide, phone buzzing nonstop, as the world asked her the question she never thought she'd have to answer. Ethan didn't respond to the headlines. He didn't have to, because she had already answered for herself, live on camera, with every twitch, every sip, every stammer. That footage couldn't be explained away, not when paired with the documents. The timestamps, the silence. She tried. She posted a shaky video in a robe. No makeup, soft tears streaming. "I'm not sure what's going on," she whispered to her followers. "This is a private matter being taken wildly out of context. Please respect our space." Fake. Fragile. Too late. The comment section didn't buy it. Neither did the sponsors. The brand she built her identity on began issuing statements, quietly removing her image from their pages. Ethan watched it all from his kitchen, stirring a fresh cup of tea, this time one he made for himself. No poison, no act, just peace. Because the question was no longer, why would she do this? The world had moved on to a better question. So what's going to happen to her now? And Ethan already knew the answer. I was the quiet one. That's what they always said. Even as a child, Ethan was the listener, the observer, the boy who didn't raise his voice unless he had something worth saying. It wasn't shyness. It was calculation. He learned early that power didn't live in noise. It lived in silence. And that silence had protected him his entire life, until he let it protect her. For years, he let Amelia control the narrative. He let her be the voice, the face, the force. She spoke for both of them. She curated their marriage like a campaign. But now the world only wanted to hear his voice. He received over 400 requests in 2 days. Interviews, podcasts, speaking panels. Everyone wanted to know how he stayed calm, how he pieced it together, how he survived a marriage that almost ended his life. But Ethan didn't say yes. He said nothing, because the point wasn't to speak louder now. It was to let her silence become deafening. She disappeared from the public, deactivated her pages, canceled her events, went completely offline. But it wasn't guilt. It was fear. Fear of what he still hadn't revealed, because he hadn't even opened the vault yet. And when he did, her story would end. Ethan stared at the small velvet box on his desk. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't sentimental. It was the last piece of his evidence, a USB drive labeled GAVE. Inside were 2 files, a video taken from their kitchen camera 3 weeks before the interview, showing Amelia slipping the substance into his tea, and a voice recording late one night where she whispered into her phone, "He's weak. He won't even make it through the year." She wasn't talking to him. She was talking to someone else. That part, Ethan hadn't exposed yet, because giving the world the full picture too fast would numb the effect. But he had always understood timing, dosage, and now he was ready to give the world the final dose. He attached the files to a secured message and sent them to a single destination, a livestream news show watched by millions. The same host who interviewed them. And when that footage aired, it would be more than proof. It would be poetry, because she didn't just betray him. She bet on his silence. And now, he gave her exactly what she gave him. Only this time, the whole world was watching. The truth hit harder than any headline. Once the kitchen footage aired, paired with that haunting voice memo, Amelia Cole stopped being an influencer. She became a symbol of betrayal, deception, and cold-blooded manipulation. She wasn't the wife of a brilliant doctor anymore. She was the woman who tried to erase him one cup at a time. Public reaction was swift. Talk shows dissected her expressions. Influencers she once mentored scrubbed her name from their bios, and brand after brand severed ties. The same world that had adored her presence now turned her into a case study in sociopathy. But what the world didn't know yet was that this wasn't just about her. There was another voice in that late-night call. Faint, male, hidden in the background. Ethan enhanced the audio, cleaned the distortion, ran a voice match, and when the results came back, his stomach turned. It wasn't just Amelia's betrayal. She hadn't acted alone. A name he never expected to see again lit up the match report. Dr. Simon Halle, former colleague, former friend, and once Amelia's guest speaker at a charity event, smiling on stage beside them like family. Simon was everything Ethan wasn't. Loud, charming, ambitious. The kind of man who used science for spotlight. He'd always flirted with Amelia a little too boldly, joked a little too freely. Ethan brushed it off at the time. Now he understood. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a conspiracy. The poisoning. The financial manipulation. The stage breakdown of Ethan's career, it was planned. And Simon was the one whispering behind the curtain. Ethan opened an old email from Simon, dated months back. Casual, polite, full of false praise. If you ever want to step away from the chaos, let me know. You've earned a rest, brother. Now Ethan read it for what it really was. A eulogy, sent before the funeral. He remembered the exact moment she gave him the first poison cup. It was a Wednesday, rain tapping softly against the windows. She brought it with a smile, leaned over his shoulder, kissed his cheek. Try this one, she said. It's good for your nerves. And he drank it, trusted it. Every sip after that was a lie poured into porcelain. Now, watching her shaky press conference, the one her legal team forced her to deliver, he noticed something poetic. She kept sipping water, over and over, each swallow like a reflex. Nervous, hollow, repetitive. It wasn't thirst. It was instinct, because she had once taught him to reach for tea when things got dark, to trust the warmth, to believe in the cup. Now that very motion haunted her. She flinched when people handed her drinks. She checked the glass twice. She no longer trusted what was poured. And Ethan? He just watched, because one sip had exposed the monster she'd become. And now, she was drowning in the taste of her own medicine, one glass at a time. Of all the things Ethan lost, his health, his peace, his trust, what cut the deepest was time. Time wasted loving the wrong person. Time spent doubting his own instincts while she poisoned his body and played the victim. But he also knew this. Every second she stole from him, he would now make count. Amelia thought the live interview was the trap. She thought the footage was the climax. But she was wrong. That was only the prelude. Because now Ethan had the courts. Now he had the public. Now he had her voice on tape. But more importantly, he had the money trail. Every financial move she made under his name. Every time she funneled funds to a hidden joint account. Every luxury purchase made in cash with receipts in both their names. Even the forged medical documents filed to justify insurance changes. She didn't just try to kill him. She tried to erase him from his own empire. And now, she was about to watch everything unravel. Not with drama, with precision. Amelia's name used to mean beauty, grace, elegance. Now it trended beside words like fraud, attempted murder, and narcissist. Her team tried to spin it. She was under stress. She suffered a breakdown. She didn't understand the side effects of the herbs. But Ethan wasn't having it. He filed his civil suit the same week the footage aired. Not for attention, not for money, for permanent consequences. In it, he named every documented violation, every lie, every dose. He even included a psychological profile, his own, signed by a licensed trauma specialist, detailing the gaslighting and long-term emotional damage. The court date was set, and Amelia? She wasn't speaking anymore. Her new lawyer advised silence. But Ethan didn't need her words, because she had already confessed with her actions, with her tea, with her fear. She wasn't just his wife anymore. She was his proof. Ethan stood in front of the mirror, tying the same navy blue tie he wore during the broadcast. But this time, it wasn't for TV. It was for court. And this time, he didn't feel like a victim. He didn't feel like a husband. He felt like a man taking back what was his. His health, his dignity, his name. It looked different now, stronger, sharper. The weight in his eyes had lifted. The darkness was still there, yes, but it had shape, direction. Because for the first time in nearly a year, Ethan Cole owned his life again. The hearing room was packed with press. Even the judge looked tense, understanding the gravity of what this case had become. Amelia sat across from him, pale, hollow, the spark gone. And when they asked Ethan to speak, he didn't start with evidence. He started with a sentence that would haunt her forever. She taught me that trust is a weapon. But she forgot, so is memory. He had remembered everything. And now, it was her turn to answer for it. Medicine had always been Ethan's world. He treated it like scripture, measured, precise, a science designed to heal. But Amelia had turned it into a weapon, a tool to manipulate, to slowly kill without lifting a knife. She'd used his trust in medicine against him. And now, he was using her own poison, and not just the chemical kind. In court, he presented the files like a doctor presenting a case study. Methodical, cold, inescapable. Exhibit A. Her search history, littered with phrases like non-detectable toxins and slow-acting thallium dosage. Exhibit B. Her fake herbal remedy brand registered in another state, used to hide the purchases. Exhibit C. A signed delivery slip to a P.O. box in a name she never told him about. She didn't just try to poison his tea. She poisoned his life. And now the courtroom smelled not of justice, but exposure. The kind that clings to skin. The kind that doesn't wash off. On the stand, Ethan never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His words were stronger because they came from pain. Real, raw, undeniable. I loved her, he said quietly. That was my first mistake. Trusting her with my health, my heart, and my silence. Every eye in the room locked on him. Even Amelia looked up for the first time in an hour. He continued. She made me believe I was breaking down, that I was overworked, that the symptoms were in my head. Pause. But they weren't. They were in the tea. Gasps. Murmurs. No one moved. The judge didn't interrupt. Because this wasn't just a case anymore. It was a man standing where few ever do, after surviving the very person who said, "I do." It went viral again. Not just the trial, but his testimony. Clipped, shared, reposted with millions of views in a matter of hours. Podcasts replayed it. News anchors quoted him. Therapists broke it down line by line. He hadn't meant to become a symbol, but that's what happened. A survivor who fought back with silence, strategy, and science. The comment sections were lit with praise. He didn't just survive, he outsmarted her. This is what calm revenge looks like. My trust issues just evolved. And Ethan? He didn't react. No press. No social media. No interviews. He let the footage speak. Because while she once tried to kill him behind closed doors, he exposed her in the one place she could never fake it, live. The trial verdict aired live. People watched from offices, cafes, living rooms, and subway stations, screens lit with tension, the nation holding its breath. Ethan sat quietly at the plaintiff's table. Still, controlled. The same man who had once laid helpless on a kitchen floor now stared straight ahead with unflinching eyes. Amelia sat across from him. She was unrecognizable. Gone were the curated outfits, the perfect hair, the influencer glow. She wore a pale suit 2 sizes too loose, dark circles carved under her eyes. She had finally run out of scripts. The judge's voice rang through the courtroom. This court finds in favor of Dr. Ethan Cole. The rest blurred. The sentence wasn't death or prison, it was exposure. The verdict sealed what the world had already seen. The lawsuits, the sponsors dropping her, the charity boards removing her name, the podcast that once invited her for motivational interviews now dissected her for manipulation and narcissism. She didn't just lose a case. She lost her mask, and millions watched it fall live. The same way Ethan had once trusted that camera to deliver the truth. It now delivered justice. Not with gavel cracks or screaming headlines, but with silence. The kind of silence that only falls when the truth has nowhere left to run. Ethan didn't celebrate. He didn't go out. Didn't pop champagne. He didn't even return most of the calls pouring in from networks, agents, publishers. Because when you survive something like that, the victory isn't loud. It's quiet. It's walking into your home and making a cup of tea without fear. It's sitting by the window and watching the rain without wondering what's in your bloodstream. The aftermath wasn't dramatic. It was peaceful. He donated the court settlement to a foundation supporting psychological abuse victims. Never announced it. Never made it public. He also funded a private research program under a new name, quietly educating doctors to detect signs of poisoning and manipulation in domestic settings. Because his story wasn't just about revenge. It was about what happens when someone uses love as a weapon, and what it takes to survive it. 6 months later, the world had moved on, but the story hadn't. Universities now taught his case in criminal psychology courses. Hospitals revised their internal policies after Ethan's interviews. In a single clip from that live broadcast, the moment Amelia's hand trembled over the teacup remained etched in digital history. A symbol, a warning. Trust is a weapon, he had said, but so is memory. That quote was now printed on the wall of the new trauma research center funded in his name, the Cole Institute for Silent Survivors. Not loud victims, not headline cases, silent survivors. People like him. People poisoned by the people they loved most, mentally, emotionally, physically, and told to smile through it. But Ethan had done more than survive. He'd exposed it, not in rage, not in chaos, but on her stage, her spotlight. He gave her a mirror and let the world watch her flinch at her own reflection. And that, he realized, was the most powerful form of revenge, not destruction. Exposure, not punishment. Revelation. Amelia now lived in quiet disgrace, sued by brands, abandoned by followers, whispered about in every room she entered. Not in prison, but imprisoned by the world's memory of who she chose to be. And Ethan? He chose something different. He walked into a small, quiet auditorium that fall, invited as a guest speaker to address a group of young doctors. He stood before them, steady and sharp. And he didn't talk about poison. He talked about resilience. I was poisoned slowly, he said, but not just by what was in the cup, by lies, by doubt, by love used as leverage. He paused, but I turned that poison into purpose. Silence. Every seat leaned in, because in the end, the truth always has a pulse. You just have to stay alive long enough to let the world hear it. The crowd stood, not for a victim, but for a survivor, a man who turned betrayal into a broadcast and revenge into a legacy. The end.